let me start with something that lives in the body before it ever reaches words. Some people grow up being chosen last, or not being chosen at all. Not for the team, not for the friend group, not for romantic interest, not even as the first thought when something good needs sharing. And the strange part is not just that it happened, it's that they kept choosing anyway. They kept showing up, they kept trying, they kept offering themselves even when the pattern made it clear that the offering would not be met with the same energy in return. Because when you are never chosen, you don't grow up believing you should stop trying. You grow up believing that being chosen is something you earn through relentless persistence, through being better, more available, more useful, more accommodating, through choosing first, always, in the hope that eventually someone will choose you back. Many of these people don't realize how deep this pattern runs until they are adults. They look back and notice that they were always the one reaching out first, always the one making plans, always the one checking in, always the one waiting to be included, hoping to be remembered, working to be considered. They were the child who waited anxiously during team selection, watching others get picked while they stood there pretending not to care. They were the teenager whose friends forgot to invite them, then apologized casually as if the exclusion was an oversight rather than a pattern. They were the one in relationships who always initiated, always pursued, always tried harder, while the other person remained lukewarm, interested enough to keep them around, but never interested enough to truly choose them. Not as a priority, not as a first choice, just as an option kept available in case nothing better appeared. This creates a specific psychological imprint that most people never put into words. It is not traditional low self-esteem, not in the way people usually understand it. These individuals often appear confident, capable, socially adept. They know how to engage. They know how to make people feel good. They know how to read a room, adjust their energy, offer what is needed. Adults often see these traits and praise them. You're so thoughtful, so giving, so easy to be around. But what they are really saying is you learned to make yourself wanted because you were never chosen naturally. You developed strategies to earn the belonging that other people receive without effort. The paradox lives quietly in the nervous system. On one hand, there is resignation, an understanding learned early and reinforced repeatedly that you will not be the person others think of first, that you will not be pursued, that interest in you will always be conditional, contingent on your usefulness, your availability, your willingness to accommodate. On the other hand, there is persistence, a refusal to stop trying, a belief, held against evidence, that if you just keep showing up, keep choosing, keep offering yourself, eventually someone will meet you there. Eventually someone will choose you back with the same consistency you have always given them. This is not optimism, it is survival dressed as hope. Because stopping would mean accepting something too painful to integrate. That you are not the kind of person people choose. That your value is transactional. That belonging for you will always require labor that others never have to perform. So you keep trying, not because it works, but because not trying would mean confronting what the pattern has been showing you all along. What makes this psychology particularly complicated is that the unchosen person often cannot identify exactly when the pattern began. There is rarely one defining moment, More often, it is an accumulation. Being picked last in gym class repeatedly. Noticing that your friends have group chats you are not included in. Realizing that the person you consider your best friend has other people they call first. Watching your siblings receive attention, affection, interest that never seems to land on you with the same intensity. Being the backup plan. The second choice. The one people turn to when their preferred option is unavailable. These moments individually can be explained away. Coincidence, oversight, circumstance. But accumulated over years, they create a map, and the map shows clearly where you stand in other people's hierarchies of care. Somewhere near the edges, present but not central, valued but not prioritized, kept but not chosen. Children are exceptionally skilled at reading these maps long before they have language to describe what they are seeing. They notice who gets picked first and why. They notice which traits earn selection and which ones do not. They notice that some children move through the world with an ease that suggests they have never doubted their place in it. That being wanted feels to them automatic, inevitable, unremarkable. And then they notice that for themselves, none of this is automatic. That they must construct what others inherit. That belonging is not something that finds them, it is something they must chase. And so they learn, not consciously, not with intention, but deeply. They learn that if they want to be included, they must make themselves easy to include. If they want to be liked, they must be useful. If they want to be remembered, they must never stop reminding others that they exist. And here is the truly confusing part. The adaptation works, not perfectly, not consistently, but enough to keep them trying. They become good at initiating, at planning, at reaching out, at making others feel seen, valued, important. They develop a kind of social intelligence that comes not from natural ease but from necessity. They become skilled at reading what people need and offering it before it is asked for. And sometimes this earns them a place. Sometimes people appreciate the effort. Sometimes they are included, considered, even valued. But the inclusion always feels conditional. It never feels like it would have happened without their effort. It never feels like someone would have come looking for them if they had stopped choosing first. This is the psychology of the person who was never chosen but kept choosing anyway. It is not a story of rejection alone, it is a story of adaptation, of a child who learned early that love, attention, and belonging are not freely given but must be earned through persistence, of a mind that develops strategies to prevent the pain of exclusion by becoming indispensable, accommodating, endlessly available, of a nervous system that learned to equate rest from pursuit with inevitable abandonment, and of an adult who still carries the belief, often without realizing it, that stopping would mean being forgotten, that if they do not keep choosing, they will not be chosen at all. And that belief, internalized so early and reinforced so often, does not just influence behavior, it shapes identity. It determines what feels safe and what feels threatening. It creates patterns that persist long after the original circumstances have changed. Because the pattern is no longer just about what others do. It is about what the person has learned to expect, to accept, to believe is simply the way connection works. As a child, being chosen is supposed to feel inevitable. Not earned, not negotiated, not proven. Just true. It is supposed to be the background hum of childhood. the quiet certainty that when teams are picked, you will not be standing there last, that when parties happen, your invitation is assumed, that when your friend talks about their best friend, they mean you, that when your parents distribute attention, affection, pride, you receive your share without having to perform for it. Being chosen in healthy development is meant to feel unremarkable, so ordinary that the child never stops to question whether they are wanted. They simply know they are. When this happens naturally, the child internalizes a foundational belief that carries them through life. I am valuable because I exist, not because of what I do, not because of what I offer, not because of how much I try, simply because I am. This belief does not arrive through words or explicit teaching. It arrives through experience, through being picked first sometimes and not feeling devastated when picked second, through having friends who call them, not just friends they call, through being included automatically, invited without having to hint, remembered without having to remind, through watching adults light up when they enter a room, not just tolerate their presence, through receiving pursuit, not just offering it. Children who are chosen learn that connection is reciprocal, that relationships involve mutual effort, that sometimes you reach out and sometimes others reach out to you, and the balance, over time, evens out naturally. They learn that their presence adds something, that people want them around, not because they are useful, but because they are themselves. They learn to trust that if they stop trying for a moment, they will not be immediately forgotten. That rest from social effort does not equal abandonment. That being wanted is not something that must be maintained through constant performance. But when a child is not chosen, they notice everything. They notice who gets picked and why. They notice that some children receive what they must work for. They notice patterns of exclusion before they have words for them. They notice that belonging is not automatic, that it requires strategy, that certain behaviors earn inclusion while others guarantee you will be overlooked. They notice who their friends talk to most, who gets invited to the birthday parties, who sits alone at lunch, who gets chosen for group projects, and who gets chosen last because someone has to pick them. They notice that the world divides into people who are wanted and people who must make themselves wanted, and they notice which category they occupy. The child does not think in these terms, of course. They do not have language for what they are learning, but the body keeps the data. The nervous system records every instance of being overlooked, every moment of waiting to be picked, every experience of watching others receive what never comes naturally to them. And over time, this data forms a conclusion that lives deeper than thought, that operates below conscious awareness, that shapes every interaction that follows. The conclusion is simple: no one will choose me first, so I must choose first, always, relentlessly. I must make myself necessary. I must earn what others are given. And so the child adapts. But the adaptation does not look like withdrawal. It looks like persistence. It looks like trying harder. It looks like becoming the one who reaches out, who initiates, who makes plans, who checks in, who remembers birthdays, who sends the first text, who suggests hanging out, who keeps the conversation going when it lags. The unchosen child does not become quiet and invisible. They become hypervigilant and proactive. They learn to anticipate needs before they are stated. They learn to make themselves useful, entertaining, easy to be around. They learn to adjust their personality to match what the room requires, not because they lack authenticity, but because authenticity they learned does not guarantee inclusion. Usefulness does. They become the friend who always has a plan, the student who always helps, the child who makes adults comfortable because they require so little maintenance. They learn to laugh at jokes that are not funny, to agree with opinions they do not hold, to minimize their own needs so as not to burden anyone, to stay quiet when hurt because expressing hurt risks pushing people away. They become skilled at reading social cues, at noticing who is losing interest, at detecting when they are becoming too much. And when they sense these things, they adjust, they pull back, they tone themselves down. They apologize for things that do not require apology. They make themselves smaller, quieter, easier to tolerate. Adults often praise this child. You're so mature for your age. You're so thoughtful. You never cause problems. You're such a good friend. But what they are really saying, without realizing it, is you learned to earn belonging. You learned to make yourself valuable through service. You learned that being chosen is not your birthright, but something you must work for constantly. And the child hears this praise and feels something complicated. Pride, because at least they are good at something. But also exhaustion, because the effort never stops, and underneath the exhaustion a question they cannot quite form. Why do other children get chosen without trying? Why is my presence not enough on its own? The unchosen child learns one powerful lesson early. No one will choose me first, so I must choose first, always, relentlessly. And that belief shapes everything that follows. It shapes how they enter rooms, how they form friendships, how they pursue romantic interest, how they navigate workplaces, how they understand their own worth. It creates an internal logic that feels unshakable. If I stop trying, I will be forgotten. If I stop reaching out, no one will reach back. If I stop making myself necessary, I will discover I was never actually wanted, just tolerated, just kept around because I made it easy to keep me around. There is a specific type of psychology that develops in someone who experiences being unchosen repeatedly. It is not low self-esteem in the traditional sense. Many unchosen people appear confident. They are often successful, capable, socially skilled. They know how to navigate relationships. They understand emotional dynamics. They can read people with frightening accuracy. But underneath the competence is something else, something quieter and more persistent. It is conditional self-worth, the belief that value is not inherent but transactional, that you are worthy when you are useful, valuable when you are needed, deserving of love when you have earned it through effort, and that the moment you stop performing, the moment you stop trying, the moment you reveal too much need of your own, your worth evaporates. This is not conscious belief. It is not something they tell themselves in words. It is something they feel in their body. It is the tightness in their chest when a text goes unanswered for too long. The anxiety that appears when plans fall through. The assumption, immediate and automatic, that if something goes wrong socially, they must have done something to cause it. The inability to rest in relationships without wondering if they are about to lose them. The constant low-level scanning for signs of disinterest, cooling affection, fading enthusiasm. The belief, held so deeply it feels like truth, that connection is something you maintain, not something that maintains itself. They learn early that love is conditional, not in the way people usually mean that phrase, Not necessarily that love is withheld as punishment or offered as reward, but that love, attention, inclusion all feel like they must be earned through a specific kind of labour, through being pleasant, through being helpful, through being low maintenance, through never asking for too much, through accommodating other people's schedules, preferences, moods, through making yourself easy to love because the alternative, being difficult to love, guarantees you will be left. And being left feels like confirmation of what they already suspected, that they were never truly chosen, just kept around until keeping them around became inconvenient. When a child grows up chosen, they learn that the world has buffers, that mistakes do not equal rejection, that having needs does not push people away, that they can be difficult sometimes and still be loved, that relationships have elasticity, that conflict does not mean ending, that you can disappoint someone and they will not disappear. But when a child grows up unchosen, consequences feel immediate and personal. If something goes wrong, they are the ones who will pay for it. If they are too much in any direction, too needy, too emotional, too opinionated, too present, they will be discarded. So they learn to prevent problems before they exist, to stay within acceptable ranges of need, to never be too much of anything. This is why many people who were never chosen become hyper-responsible adults, not because they are naturally generous or naturally selfless, but because generosity and selflessness once felt like the price of admission. They learned that in order to be included, they must offer something, and so they offer everything: their time, their energy, their resources, their emotional labour. They become the person everyone calls when they need something, the person who shows up, the person who remembers, the person who anticipates needs and meets them before they are voiced. And this works, to a degree. People appreciate them, people value them. But the valuing feels different from being chosen. It feels like being useful, and usefulness is not the same as being wanted for who you are. Another deep imprint of being unchosen is how these individuals learn to read rooms. They become exceptionally attuned to social dynamics. They notice who is engaged and who is distracted. They notice shifts in tone, changes in energy, subtle signs of boredom or discomfort. They notice body language. They notice who talks to whom and who gets excluded from certain conversations. They notice patterns, who texts back quickly and who leaves them on read, who initiates plans and who only responds when invited, who asks questions about their life and who only talks about themselves. This is not casual observation, it is surveillance, a constant scanning for information that will tell them where they stand. They notice these things because the information feels essential. If they can detect disinterest early, they can adjust before rejection happens. If they can sense someone pulling away, they can try harder, offer more, accommodate better. If they can read the signs that they are becoming too much, they can scale back before they are told to leave. This looks from the outside like emotional intelligence, and it is, in a sense. But it is emotional intelligence born not from curiosity but from necessity, not from wanting to understand people, but from needing to predict whether people will choose to keep them. The exhaustion of this is hard to describe to people who have never experienced it. It is the exhaustion of never being fully present because part of your attention is always monitoring how your words are being received, monitoring whether you are talking too much or not enough, monitoring whether the other person seems engaged or is just being polite, monitoring whether you are being interesting, entertaining, valuable, worth the effort, even in moments that should feel relaxed, even with people who care about them. The monitoring continues, because relaxing fully would mean missing a signal, and missing a signal could mean missing the moment when someone decides they are no longer worth choosing. Psychologically, this is the mind trying to prevent rejection by predicting it. If I see it coming, I can protect myself. If I know I am not wanted, I can leave before being asked to. If I can read the patterns, I can control the outcome. But control is an illusion. All this vigilance really does is prevent them from ever resting, from ever trusting that they are wanted without constant verification, from ever believing that someone might choose them even when they are not performing perfectly. Another trait often seen in people who are never chosen is how they relate to reciprocity. They become extraordinarily aware of balance, of who reaches out and who waits to be reached out to, of who initiates plans and who only participates when invited, of who asks questions and who only answers, of who shows up and who makes excuses. They notice these patterns because imbalance for them is not just disappointing, it is information. It tells them what they have always suspected, that they care more than they are cared for, that they invest more than is invested in them, that they are choosing people who would not choose them back with the same consistency. This is not scorekeeping in the petty sense. It is not about keeping a tally to use as ammunition later. It is about survival, about protecting themselves from pouring energy into relationships that are fundamentally one-sided, about recognizing when they are being kept as an option rather than chosen as a priority. They notice who texts them first and who only responds, who remembers their birthday and who needs to be reminded, who checks in when they go quiet and who does not notice their absence, who makes time for them and who is always too busy unless they need something. These patterns, over time, paint a clear picture, and the picture usually confirms what they already believed, that most of their relationships exist because they maintain them, that if they stopped trying, most of these relationships would simply fade. There is a specific pain in this realization. The pain of recognizing that people you have chosen, people you have cared for, people you have shown up for repeatedly, would not do the same for you. Not because they are malicious, not because they do not like you, but because you were never their priority. You were their convenience, their backup, their option, the person they appreciate having around but would not fight to keep. And this pain is complicated because it does not come with clear villains. Most of these people are not cruel. They are simply living according to their own priorities, and you are not high on those priorities. You never were. The unchosen person often reaches a moment of clarity, a moment where they decide to test their theory. They stop reaching out, they stop initiating, they stop being the one who makes plans, who sends the text, who keeps the connection alive, and they wait to see who reaches back, who notices their absence, who makes effort in return. And the answer, more often than not, is devastating. Most people do not reach back. Most people do not notice. Or if they notice, they do not care enough to do anything about it. The silence that follows is not ambiguous. It is confirmation. You were right. The connection existed because you created it, and when you stopped creating it, it disappeared. This is not bitterness, it is pattern recognition. The unchosen person learns to see imbalance because imbalance once meant they were about to be left, and seeing it does not make them angry usually. It makes them tired. Tired of being the person who cares more. Tired of being the one who tries harder. Tired of choosing people who do not choose them back. Tired of the asymmetry that defines most of their relationships. And yet, even with this awareness, many of them continue. They continue choosing. They continue reaching out. They continue trying. Not because they believe it will change, but because stopping would mean accepting that they will be alone. And loneliness feels more terrifying than the exhaustion of one-sided effort. There is also a specific relationship these individuals develop with rejection. For most people, rejection is unpleasant but survivable, an isolated event, a disappointment, a momentary hurt that fades. But for the person who was never chosen, rejection is not an event. It is a confirmation. It is the universe agreeing with what they have always known about themselves, that they are not the kind of person people choose, that their worth is conditional, that their fear was justified, that they were right to expect this. Every rejection, no matter how small, no matter how insignificant it might appear to others, lands with the weight of accumulated evidence. It is not just this person rejecting them now. It is every person who ever overlooked them, every time they were picked last, every invitation that never came, every friendship that faded, every romantic interest that went nowhere. The paradox is that rejection feels both surprising and inevitable. Surprising because despite everything, they still hoped, they still chose, they still tried, they still believed on some level that maybe this time would be different, that maybe this person would be the one who chose them back, who saw their value, who wanted them without conditions. But rejection also feels inevitable because of course it does. Of course this person did not choose them. No one ever really does. And so rejection confirms the pattern, reinforces the belief, deepens the wound that was already there. It does not create new pain, it reopens old pain. Pain that never fully healed, because it never stopped being inflicted. And yet, they do not stop trying. This is what makes the pattern so difficult to understand from the outside. If rejection hurts so much, why keep pursuing it? If being unchosen is so painful, why keep choosing people who will not choose you back? But the logic, to them, is clear. If they stop trying, they guarantee the outcome they fear most. Being alone, being forgotten, being invisible. At least when they try, there is hope. At least when they choose, there is possibility. At least when they pursue, they are doing something. Not trying feels like giving up, and giving up feels like admitting that they were never worthy of being chosen in the first place. Psychologically, this makes sense. If rejection is expected, trying harder feels like the only logical response. Not because they lack dignity, but because persistence once offered hope when nothing else did. When the world makes it clear that you are not automatically wanted, effort becomes your strategy. If I cannot be chosen naturally, perhaps I can be chosen through proving myself, through being better, through being indispensable, through making it impossible to overlook me. The belief is that rejection happened because they were not enough, so the solution is to become more helpful, more available, more accommodating, more perfect. And when that fails, which it inevitably does because the problem was never about being enough, they conclude they must try even harder. Another area where the effects become visible is in romantic relationships. This is where the pattern of being unchosen becomes most painful and most obvious. People who are never chosen often find themselves attracted to partners who are emotionally unavailable, not because they enjoy unavailability, but because unavailability feels familiar. It recreates the dynamic they know, the dynamic where they pursue and the other person remains ambivalent, where they offer everything and the other person offers breadcrumbs, where they fight to be chosen and the other person cannot quite commit to choosing them fully. These relationships often follow a predictable pattern. They meet someone. They feel drawn to them. They begin pursuing. The other person responds, but not consistently. They are interested, but not fully. They are present, but not reliable. They offer attention, but in doses small enough to keep the unchosen person hooked, without ever giving them the security of being fully chosen. And the unchosen person interprets this as a challenge. If I try harder, if I am better, if I am more patient, more understanding, more accommodating, eventually they will choose me fully. Eventually I will be enough. But what they do not realize, or cannot accept, is that the problem is not about being enough. The problem is that they are chasing someone who is not capable of, or not interested in, choosing them. And chasing unavailability is familiar. It feels like home, because being unchosen is what they know. Being kept at a distance while working to close the gap is the relational pattern they learned as children. And so even when it hurts, even when it is clearly not working, they persist. Not because they are foolish, but because this kind of pain is recognizable, and recognizable pain feels safer than the disorienting experience of being genuinely chosen. There is something else that happens in these dynamics. The unchosen person often becomes skilled at interpreting minimal effort as meaningful. A text that says, quote, 0 feels like evidence of care. A last-minute plan feels like being valued. A moment of affection after days of distance feels like progress. They learn to find hope in crumbs because crumbs are what they are used to. They learn to tell themselves stories about why the other person is not fully present. They are scared of intimacy. They have been hurt before. They need time. They are working on themselves. And all of these things might even be true. But they miss the larger truth, that someone who wanted to choose them would choose them, that excuses, no matter how valid, do not change the fundamental reality of not being prioritized. Meanwhile, when someone who is genuinely interested appears, someone who is available and consistent and clear about wanting them, the unchosen person often feels suspicious. This person must want something, or they do not really know me yet, and when they do, they will leave. Or this feels wrong because it is too easy, or I do not feel that spark, that intensity, that desperate need to win them over. Because the spark, they have learned, comes from uncertainty, from chasing, from not being chosen. When someone chooses them easily, clearly, without games, it does not feel like love. It feels unfamiliar, uncomfortable, sometimes even boring, because they have associated love with effort, with proving, with persistence in the face of ambivalence, and so they often reject the people who would actually choose them and continue pursuing the people who will not. This is not self-sabotage in the way people usually mean that phrase. It is not about consciously ruining good things. It is about the nervous system recognizing what feels familiar and mistaking familiarity for compatibility. Being chosen feels foreign. It triggers discomfort. It raises questions. Why would they want me? What is wrong with them that they are interested in me so easily? Surely there is a catch. Surely they will realize their mistake. And so the unchosen person either pushes these people away or cannot fully open to them. They wait for the inevitable rejection. They scan for signs that this person will leave, and sometimes, through their own vigilance and inability to receive, they create the very rejection they feared. Another deep imprint shows up in how these individuals experience success. Even when they achieve things, even when they accomplish goals, even when they receive recognition, it does not feel like being chosen. It feels like they forced their way in, like they worked harder than everyone else, and that is why they succeeded. Not because they were wanted, not because anyone sought them out, but because they ground themselves down through effort until finally someone had to acknowledge them. Success for them is never proof of worth. It is proof that persistence pays off, that if you try hard enough, long enough, eventually you can earn what others receive naturally. This shows up as imposter syndrome, the persistent feeling that they do not belong, that they snuck in somehow, that they are pretending to be something they are not, that any moment someone will realize they do not deserve to be there and will ask them to leave. They wait to be found out, to be exposed, to have someone finally say what they have always believed. You do not belong here. You were never really chosen for this. You just wore us down with your effort. And so they overwork, they overprepare, they never relax into their position. They never trust that they were wanted. They never believe that they earned their place through value, only through persistence. Praise does not help. When someone compliments them, when someone acknowledges their work, when someone expresses appreciation, they cannot fully receive it. They deflect, they minimize, they attribute success to luck, to timing, to other people's contributions. They cannot accept that maybe, possibly, they are actually good at what they do. That maybe they were chosen because they deserve to be chosen, because that would contradict the core belief, and the core belief is too foundational to question. So instead, they find ways to explain success that preserve the belief. I got lucky. I worked harder than everyone else. I happened to be in the right place at the right time. Anyone could have done it. They were desperate. I was just persistent. From a psychological standpoint, this makes sense. If belonging was earned through persistence, not given through value, then achievements feel like persistence paid off, not like they were deserved. The belief system cannot integrate the idea that they might be inherently valuable, that people might want them without conditions, that success might be evidence of capability, not just evidence of exhaustion and effort. And so even in moments of accomplishment, even in spaces where they have clearly earned their place, they feel like visitors, like they are borrowing someone else's life, like at any moment they will be asked to give it back. There is also a specific type of loneliness that comes from never being chosen. It is not the loneliness of being alone. Many unchosen people are not alone. They have friends, they have relationships, they have people in their lives, But the loneliness persists anyway because it is not about quantity. It is about quality. It is about uncertainty, about not knowing, ever, if the people in their lives would have chosen them if they had not chosen first, about wondering if they are loved or just tolerated, wanted or just accepted, valued or just useful. This loneliness lives in the space between connection and certainty. They are connected to people, but they are never certain of the connection. They never fully trust it, because they initiated it, they maintained it, they kept it alive through effort, and so they wonder, constantly, quietly, what would happen if they stopped? Would anyone notice? Would anyone reach out? Would anyone care enough to keep them? Or would the relationship simply dissolve, revealing that it was never mutual to begin with? That it existed only because they refused to let it die? The question haunts them. Would they have picked me if I had not picked them? And the question cannot be answered without risk. To test it would require stopping, and stopping might confirm their worst fear. So they do not stop. They keep choosing, they keep initiating, they keep being the bridge. And the loneliness continues. Not the loneliness of isolation, the loneliness of never knowing if you are genuinely wanted or just conveniently present. The loneliness of being surrounded by people you chose while wondering if any of them would have chosen you. This loneliness is compounded by the grief of one-sided emotional investment. They show up for people who do not show up for them. They remember people who forget them. They care deeply about people who care casually about them in return. They organize the birthday parties that no one organizes for them. They check in on people who never check in back. They listen to problems they are never asked about in return, and over time this imbalance creates a specific kind of exhaustion. Not just physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. The exhaustion of giving and giving and giving while receiving so much less in return. They tell themselves stories to make this bearable. They are just busy. They show love differently. They are not good at reaching out. They are going through something. And again, these things might be true. But underneath the stories is a simpler truth. That they are investing more than is being invested in them. That they are showing up for people who would not show up for them. That they are choosing people who are not choosing them back with anything close to the same energy. And this truth, when it surfaces, feels unbearable, because it means most of their relationships are built on their effort alone. And if they stopped providing that effort, the relationships would disappear, not because people hate them, but because people do not need them enough to work for them. Another subtle but powerful effect is how these individuals relate to their own needs. Needs they learned early are dangerous. Needs make you inconvenient. Needs push people away. Needs give people reasons to choose someone easier, someone less complicated, someone who requires less. And so they learn to minimize their needs, to hide them, to apologize for them, to handle everything alone so that no one ever has to be burdened by what they require. This shows up in small ways and large ways. They do not ask for help even when they are drowning. They do not express hurt even when they are devastated. They do not admit exhaustion even when they can barely function. They say I am fine when they are not fine. They say it is okay when it is not okay. They accommodate other people's schedules, preferences, moods, needs, while never mentioning their own. They make themselves low maintenance because high maintenance people, they learned, do not get chosen. They get left. From the outside, this looks like strength, like independence, like not needing anyone. But inside, it is something else. It is fear. Fear that needing something will confirm what they already suspect, that they are too much, that they require more than they are worth, that if they reveal the depth of their needs, people will realize that choosing them is not worth the effort, and so they perform self-sufficiency, not because they prefer it, but because asking for what they need feels like inviting rejection. This creates a painful cycle. They hide their needs to avoid pushing people away. But hiding their needs means no one ever really knows them. And not being known means relationships stay surface level. And surface level relationships do not provide what they are actually seeking, which is to be chosen for who they really are, not just for the easy version of themselves they perform. But revealing who they really are feels impossible because who they really are includes needs, vulnerabilities, messiness, difficulty. And those things, they believe, are exactly what makes someone unchosen. Psychologically, this is the mind trying to make itself rejection-proof. If I need nothing, I cannot be rejected for needing too much. If I am easy, I cannot be left for being difficult. If I handle everything alone, no one can complain I am a burden. But the cost is high. The cost is that they are never truly seen, never truly known, never truly chosen for their actual self, only for the carefully curated version they present, the version that requires nothing, that causes no problems, that makes everyone else's life easier, and that version might be appreciated, but it is not loved. Not really, because it is not real. Another lasting imprint shows up in how they process compliments and affection. When someone expresses care, when someone offers a compliment, when someone shows interest, they become suspicious. Not consciously, not deliberately, but the suspicion is there. What do they want from me? Why are they saying this? What is the catch? When will they take it back? Because positive attention in their experience is temporary, it is conditional, it comes with strings attached, and so they cannot simply receive it, they cannot let it land, they cannot believe it is genuine, they wait for the other shoe to drop. This shows up as deflection. Someone compliments their work and they immediately minimize it. Someone expresses affection and they make a joke to diffuse the intensity. Someone shows consistent interest, and they wait for the moment it will stop. Because consistency in their experience is rare. People start interested and then fade. People say they care and then disappear. People offer closeness and then withdraw. And so they protect themselves by not believing it in the first place, by staying guarded even when someone is trying to reach them, by assuming the positive attention will not last because positive attention never lasts. There is also the question that runs underneath every compliment, every expression of care, every moment of affection. Why me? Not said out loud, but present, always present. Why would they choose me? What did I do to deserve this? And if I cannot identify what I did, then I cannot maintain it. And if I cannot maintain it, I will lose it. And so compliments create anxiety, not comfort. Affection creates vigilance, not safety. Care creates the pressure to perform, to keep earning it, to not do anything that would make it stop. Because it will stop. Eventually, it always does. When someone is genuinely interested, when someone pursues them, when someone shows up consistently, the unchosen person often finds ways to push them away. Not overtly, not through explicit rejection, but through testing, through pulling back to see if the other person will chase, through creating problems to see if the other person will stay, through revealing the difficult parts of themselves to see if the other person will leave. Because if someone is going to leave, better it happen now. Better they leave while the unchosen person still has some control over it. Better to end it on their terms than to be blindsided later when they have allowed themselves to believe it might last. This is not cynicism, it is self-protection. When being chosen has always been temporary or conditional, permanence feels like a trap waiting to close. Trusting feels like handing someone the weapon they will eventually use against you. Vulnerability feels like giving someone evidence they will use to justify leaving, and so they stay guarded, even with people who earn their trust, even with people who show up consistently, even with people who choose them clearly, because the belief is too deep to dislodge with evidence alone. The belief is that they are not the kind of person who gets chosen permanently, and so even when someone tries to choose them, they cannot quite believe it will last. From a neurological standpoint, this pattern has roots in how the brain calibrates expectations. The brain is a prediction machine. It takes data from past experiences and uses that data to predict future outcomes. When the data consistently shows that you are not chosen, that people lose interest, that relationships require your effort to survive, that positive attention is temporary, the brain builds a model of reality around those patterns, and that model becomes the lens through which all future experiences are interpreted. So when something contradicts the model, when someone chooses you easily, when someone stays consistently, when affection does not require constant maintenance, the brain does not interpret this as good news. It interprets it as anomaly, as error, as something that does not fit the established pattern, and therefore cannot be trusted. The nervous system stays on alert, waiting for the pattern to reassert itself, waiting for this person to eventually behave like everyone else, to lose interest, to pull away, to reveal that the choosing was temporary after all. This is why understanding alone does not change the pattern. The unchosen person might intellectually know that not everyone will leave. They might consciously recognize that some people do choose consistently. But the nervous system operates on older, deeper data collected over years, data that shaped neural pathways, data that created automatic responses, and those responses do not change just because the mind understands they should. The body still tenses when a text goes unanswered. The chest still tightens when plans fall through. The anxiety still appears when someone shows genuine interest, because the body is not being pessimistic, it is being accurate to its own data, and its data says hoping to be chosen leads to pain. The nervous system is not being pessimistic, it is being accurate to its own data, and its data says hoping to be chosen leads to pain. This is why healing these patterns is not simply a matter of deciding to think differently. The patterns are not just thoughts, they are embodied responses, automatic reactions that bypass conscious control. They live in the tension that appears in social situations, in the scanning for signs of rejection, in the inability to rest in relationships, in the suspicion that positive attention will not last. These are not choices, they are adaptations. And adaptations that saved you once are difficult to unlearn even when they no longer serve you. there is also a specific relationship these individuals develop with hope. Hope, for them, is complicated. On one hand, they need hope. Without hope, they would stop trying entirely. Without hope, the pattern would force them into complete isolation. Without hope, they would have to accept that they will never be chosen, and that acceptance feels like death. So they hope. They hope that maybe this time will be different, that maybe this person will be the one who chooses them fully, that maybe if they try hard enough, are patient enough, are good enough, eventually someone will see their worth and want them without conditions. But hope also feels dangerous, because hope means vulnerability. Hope means opening yourself to disappointment. Hope means allowing yourself to believe something good might happen, which makes it hurt more when it does not. And so they oscillate. They hope, and then they protect themselves from hoping too much. They open, and then they close before they can be hurt. They let themselves believe, and then they remind themselves not to believe too fully, because belief makes the inevitable rejection more painful. This is the cruel mathematics of being unchosen. Hope is necessary to keep trying, but hope also guarantees you will feel the rejection fully when it comes. Some of them try to hope differently, to hope less, to hope with caveats. They tell themselves, I will try, but I will not expect anything. I will put myself out there, but I will not be surprised if nothing comes of it. I will choose this person, but I will protect myself from caring too much. This feels like wisdom, like learning from experience, like finally understanding how to navigate relationships without getting destroyed. But it is not wisdom, it is armor. And armor, while it protects, also prevents. It prevents them from fully experiencing connection even when connection is available. It keeps them at a distance from their own relationships. It ensures that even when someone does choose them, they cannot fully receive it. Another area where this psychology becomes visible is in how they handle success in relationships. When someone genuinely chooses them, when someone pursues them consistently, when someone expresses clear and sustained interest, they do not celebrate. They become suspicious. This person must not really know me yet, or they want something, or they are settling, or there is something wrong with them that makes them interested in me. Because people who are worthwhile do not choose people like me. So if this person is choosing me, either they are not actually worthwhile, or they do not actually see me clearly. And when they do see me clearly, they will leave. This suspicion leads to testing, not deliberate testing, not conscious testing, but testing nonetheless. They push the person away to see if they will fight to stay. They reveal the difficult parts of themselves to see if the person will run. They create conflict to see if the person can handle it. They withdraw to see if the person will pursue. They become more needy, more difficult, more complicated to see if the person will remain. Not because they want to lose the person, but because they need to know if the choosing is real, if it is conditional, if it will disappear the moment they stop being easy. And sometimes the testing creates the exact outcome they feared. The person leaves, not because they did not care, but because the constant testing, the refusal to trust, the inability to receive their affection, becomes exhausting. And the unchosen person interprets this as confirmation. See, I was right. They did not really want me. They left, just like everyone else. They do not recognize that their own behavior pushed the person away. Or if they recognize it, they see it as inevitable. Better to have controlled when it ended than to have been blindsided later. Better to have proven they were right than to have allowed themselves to believe they might be chosen. When they are not testing, they are often over-accommodating, trying to be perfect, trying to never cause problems, trying to be so easy, so pleasant, so uncomplicated that the person will have no reason to leave. They suppress their needs, they hide their difficult emotions, they agree to things they do not want, they ignore boundaries that are being crossed, they tolerate treatment that hurts them, all in an effort to make themselves worth keeping, to be so good, so giving, so perfect that surely this person will choose to stay. But perfection is exhausting and unsustainable, and eventually something breaks. Either they burn out from the effort, or the other person recognizes they are not seeing the real person, just a performance. And either way, the relationship ends, and the unchosen person adds it to the pile of evidence. More proof that they are not chosen. More reinforcement of the pattern. From a psychological standpoint, there is also a specific type of grief that surfaces later in life. Not the grief of a specific loss, not the grief of a relationship ending or a person leaving, but a more diffuse grief, the grief of absence, the grief of something that never happened, the grief of never being someone's first choice, of never being pursued, of never having someone fight to keep them, of never experiencing the feeling of being wanted without effort. This grief does not attach to one memory. It attaches to a lifetime of moments, to every time they were picked last, to every friendship they initiated that was never reciprocated, to every romantic interest who treated them like an option, to every success that felt like they forced their way in rather than being invited. This grief arrives quietly, often without trigger. It shows up as sadness that does not have a clear story, as a heaviness that appears for no obvious reason, as an ache that cannot be explained by current circumstances, because the current circumstances might be fine. They might have relationships, they might have success, they might objectively be doing well. But underneath is the accumulated grief of a lifetime of not being chosen, and that grief finally has space to surface when they are no longer in survival mode, when they are no longer fighting to be included, when they have enough safety to stop and feel what was happening all along. Psychologically, this is called delayed processing. The mind protects itself by postponing emotional integration until safety becomes possible. When you are still living in the pattern, when you are still trying to survive it, you cannot afford to grieve fully. Grieving would interfere with the effort required to keep being chosen. But later, when life stabilizes, when the acute threat passes, the emotions that were postponed begin to surface. And when they do, they can feel overwhelming. Not because they are new, but because they were held back for so long. Because the nervous system finally has permission to release what it had to suppress. Many people mistake this stage for regression. They think something is wrong with them. Why am I suddenly so sad when nothing bad is happening? Why am I crying over things that happened years ago? Why am I grieving relationships that ended long ago? But this is not regression. It is completion. It is the nervous system finally processing what it could not process at the time. And this is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that they are finally safe enough to feel, that the body trusts them enough to release what it has been holding, And while it feels like falling apart, it is actually a form of integration. But here is the part most people miss about those who were never chosen. They did not just lose something, they also developed something. Through all the rejection, all the persistence, all the effort, they built capacities that many people never develop. They learned how to show up, how to be loyal, how to care for people even when that care is not returned. They learned persistence, not the stubborn kind, but the kind that says, I will keep trying even when trying is painful. They learned to see value in people that others overlook, because they know what it feels like to be overlooked, and they do not want anyone else to feel that invisibility. They became the person who notices who is left out, who includes the excluded, who reaches out to the person sitting alone, who remembers the person everyone forgets, who chooses the unchosen, not because they are saints, not because they are trying to be good, but because they recognize the pattern. They see it in others instantly, and they cannot walk past it without doing something. They became the choosers, the ones who pick the people no one else picks, who see potential where others see nothing, who value people not for what they offer, but for who they are. This is not a small thing. This is a profound gift, a gift that was not taught but lived, a gift born from pain but transformed into compassion. They also developed an extraordinary capacity for empathy, not the kind that is taught in therapy or learned through books, but the kind that comes from lived experience, from understanding pain without needing explanation, from recognizing unspoken struggles, from seeing beneath the surface of what people present. They know what it feels like to be invisible, so they see people who are invisible. They know what it feels like to be dismissed, so they take people seriously. They know what it feels like to be misunderstood, so they listen deeply. This empathy is not a skill. It is a survival mechanism that became a strength, a way of navigating the world that was built from necessity, but became a genuine way of connecting. But empathy without boundaries becomes exhaustion, and choosing others without being chosen becomes loneliness, and persistence without reciprocity becomes depletion. So the gifts are real, and so is the cost. The unchosen person often gives and gives and gives until there is nothing left. They become the emotional support for everyone else while having no one to support them. They hold space for others while their own needs remain unmet. They see others deeply while remaining unseen themselves, and over time this imbalance drains them, not just emotionally, physically, spiritually. They become exhausted in ways that rest cannot fix, because the exhaustion is not just from doing too much, it is from giving too much while receiving too little. Healing for the person who was never chosen doesn't mean becoming someone else. It does not mean erasing the empathy, the loyalty, the capacity to see others. It does not mean becoming cold or selfish or unavailable. It means teaching the nervous system something it never learned, that worth is not earned through effort, that being chosen can happen without striving, that rest from pursuit does not equal abandonment, that relationships can be mutual, that care can be reciprocal, that you do not have to perform to be valued, that you can be chosen simply for existing. This learning does not happen through logic. It does not happen through understanding intellectually that you deserve better. It happens through repeated experiences, through relationships that remain steady even when you are not performing, through people who choose you without conditions, through moments where you are seen and valued for who you actually are, not for what you offer, through safety that is consistent enough that the nervous system can finally begin to trust it. This is slow work, not because the person is broken, but because the pattern was built over years, over hundreds of interactions, over thousands of moments where the nervous system recorded the data that choosing yourself means being alone. You cannot overwrite years of data with one good experience. You cannot heal a nervous system that learned to expect rejection by telling it not to expect rejection. You can only slowly, gently, patiently offer it new data. Data that says this person stayed. This person chose me without me choosing them first. This person showed up even when I was difficult. This person cared even when I was not useful. This person remained even when I stopped performing. And over time, with enough repetition, with enough consistency, the nervous system begins to integrate this new information. Not quickly, not easily, but gradually. One of the most important steps is learning to recognize when you're choosing from hope versus when you're choosing from habit. Because there is a difference. Choosing from hope means you see potential in someone and you believe, with some evidence, that they might choose you back. Choosing from habit means you are repeating the pattern. You are chasing someone who is not available. You are pursuing someone who has shown you clearly that they will not choose you. You are investing in someone who is not investing in you. And you are doing it not because you believe it will work, but because this is what you know how to do. This is the familiar path. This is the role you learn to play. Learning to tell the difference requires honesty. It requires asking yourself questions that are uncomfortable. Am I choosing this person because I genuinely believe in the connection? Or am I choosing them because they are not choosing me and that feels familiar? Am I pursuing this relationship because it is mutual? Or am I pursuing it because I'm trying to win them over? Am I staying because I am valued? Or am I staying because leaving would mean admitting I was never valued at all? These questions do not have comfortable answers, but they are necessary, because without them, the pattern continues. Without them, you keep choosing people who will never choose you back. Without them, you exhaust yourself trying to earn what was never going to be given. This does not mean never initiating. It does not mean sitting back and waiting for people to come to you. It does not mean never making effort. It means noticing whether you are the only one who ever does. It means paying attention to whether your effort is met with effort in return. It means recognizing imbalance when it exists and allowing that information to matter. It means honoring reciprocity, not as scorekeeping, but as information about how someone actually values you. Because if you are always the one reaching out, always the one making plans, always the one trying, then you are not in a mutual relationship. You are in a one-sided dynamic. And one-sided dynamics do not become mutual just because you keep hoping they will. Another crucial step is learning to recognize reciprocity without judgment. Reciprocity is not pettiness. It is not keeping score. It is not demanding that every text be returned immediately or that every gesture be matched exactly. It is simply noticing patterns over time, noticing who initiates, who makes effort, who shows up, who remembers, who asks, who cares, and noticing whether there is balance. Not perfect balance, not transactional balance, but enough balance that the relationship feels mutual, that both people are invested, that both people are choosing each other. For the unchosen person, This noticing is difficult because they have spent their entire life making excuses for imbalance. He is just busy. She shows love differently. They are going through something. Maybe I am expecting too much. Maybe I am being unreasonable. Maybe I should just be grateful they respond at all. And these excuses prevent them from seeing clearly, from recognizing that busy people make time for what matters to them, that people show love in ways that can be recognized if they actually care, that going through something does not excuse consistent one-sidedness, that expecting reciprocity is not expecting too much. It is expecting what should be baseline in any healthy relationship. Honoring reciprocity means allowing yourself to see when it is not there, and more importantly, allowing yourself to care when it is not there. It means recognizing that a friendship where you do all the initiating is not a real friendship, that a romantic relationship where you do all the pursuing is not a real relationship, that a connection maintained entirely by your effort is not a connection. It is you performing connection alone, and releasing that performance is not giving up. It is respecting yourself. It is acknowledging that you deserve relationships where both people are choosing, where both people are trying, where both people care enough to show it. This letting go comes with grief, because even when a relationship is one-sided, even when you are clearly not chosen, there is still loss in releasing it. Loss of the hope that it might change, loss of the person you wished they would be, loss of the connection you tried to create. And this grief is valid. It matters. It deserves space. But so does your worth. And your worth is not determined by how much you can tolerate being unchosen. It is not measured by how long you can persist in relationships that do not serve you. It is not proven by your willingness to accept less than you give. Your worth is inherent, and honoring it means making choices that reflect that, even when those choices are painful. Respecting reciprocity doesn't make you cold, it makes you honest. And honesty is the first step toward relationships that don't require constant proof, toward connections that are mutual, toward people who choose you with the same energy you choose them. This does not mean you will never be disappointed. It does not mean you will never encounter people who do not reciprocate, but it means you will recognize it sooner. You will honor it when you see it. You will allow it to inform your decisions, and you will stop pouring yourself into relationships where the other person is not pouring themselves into you. There is also a specific healing that happens when you learn to receive without performing. For the unchosen person, receiving feels dangerous. Receiving means someone is giving to you, and giving creates debt, and debt creates obligation. An obligation means you owe something, and owing something means you have to perform to pay it back. And performing is exhausting, so they avoid receiving. They deflect compliments, they refuse help, they minimize their accomplishments, they reject care. They say no thank you when someone offers support, not because they do not need it, but because receiving it feels like accepting a burden they will have to repay. Learning to receive means learning that care does not always create debt, that sometimes people give because they want to, not because they expect something in return, that accepting help does not make you weak or needy, that allowing someone to care for you is not a burden, it is a gift. Not just to you, but to them. Because giving is how people express care, and when you refuse to receive, you block their ability to express it. You prevent the connection that happens through the exchange of care. You stay isolated even in the presence of people who want to be close to you. But receiving requires vulnerability. It requires letting someone see you in need. It requires admitting you do not have everything handled. It requires trusting that someone will not use your need against you later. And for the unchosen person, this trust is the hardest part, because need, in their experience, pushes people away. Need makes you unchosen. So receiving care means risking being seen as needy. And being seen as needy means risking rejection. And rejection, they have learned, is inevitable if you show too much need. So they practice receiving in small ways first, accepting a compliment without deflecting, saying yes when someone offers to help with something small, allowing someone to pay for coffee, receiving a kind word and letting it land instead of immediately explaining it away. These are not comfortable. They trigger the old fear. The fear that accepting too much will create expectations they cannot meet. That letting someone give will reveal how much they actually need. That receiving without immediately reciprocating will make them a burden. But discomfort is not danger. And practicing receiving, even when it feels wrong, teaches the nervous system that care can exist without conditions. This often feels uncomfortable at first, not because something is wrong, but because being chosen without striving is a skill the nervous system never developed. And new skills require practice, patience, time. They require allowing yourself to feel the discomfort without running from it. They require sitting with the unfamiliarity of someone caring without you having to earn it. They require believing slowly that maybe you are worth caring for even when you're not performing, even when you're not useful, even when you are just you. Another essential part of healing is learning to recognize genuine interest, because for the unchosen person, genuine interest is difficult to identify. They have spent so long analyzing breadcrumbs, interpreting mixed signals, finding hope in minimal effort, that they often cannot recognize what consistent choosing actually looks like. They confuse intensity with interest. They mistake emotional unavailability for mystery. They interpret inconsistency as passion, and they miss the quiet, steady, consistent care that is actually how genuine choosing presents itself. Genuine interest is not dramatic. It is not a whirlwind. It is not constant intensity followed by distance. It is steady. It is someone who shows up, who follows through, who says they will call and then calls, who makes plans and keeps them, who asks about your life and remembers what you said, who makes time for you even when they are busy, who communicates clearly instead of leaving you guessing, who pursues you without you having to drop hints, who wants to see you and shows it through action, not just words. For someone used to chasing, this can feel boring. It can feel like it lacks spark, because the spark, they learned, comes from uncertainty, from wondering if this person likes you, from analyzing every interaction, from trying to decode mixed signals, from the relief when they finally respond after leaving you waiting. That anxiety and relief cycle feels like intensity. It feels like passion. But it is not love. It is activation. It is the nervous system responding to threat and then finding temporary relief. And when someone is genuinely interested, consistently available, clearly choosing you, there is no threat. So there is no activation. and without activation, it feels wrong. But wrong does not mean bad. It means unfamiliar. It means your nervous system is not getting the signals it is used to. It is not having to scan for rejection. It is not having to work to maintain interest. It is not having to prove worth. And that absence of familiar struggle feels disorienting. It raises questions. Why is this so easy? What is wrong with them that they like me? Is this even real if I'm not fighting for it? These questions reveal how deeply the pattern is embedded. The belief that love must be earned, that connection requires struggle, that if someone chooses you easily, there must be something wrong with either you or them. Learning to trust genuine interest means staying present even when it feels uncomfortable. It means not sabotaging good things because they do not match your internal template for how connection should feel. It means allowing someone to show up for you consistently and believing that their consistency is real, not waiting for them to leave, not testing them to see if they will stay, not pushing them away preemptively, just allowing the experience of being chosen to exist. And over time, if the choosing remains steady, the nervous system begins to recalibrate, begins to learn that maybe, possibly, this is what being chosen actually feels like. Not dramatic, not intense, not requiring constant proof, just steady. Genuine choosing doesn't feel dramatic, it feels steady. And for someone used to chasing, steady can feel wrong. But wrong doesn't mean dangerous. Sometimes it just means new. Sometimes it means your nervous system is encountering something it has no reference for, something that does not match the template built from years of being unchosen. And the only way to integrate this new template is to stay with it, to allow the discomfort without running, to let someone choose you consistently and notice that the sky does not fall, that they do not leave, that being chosen does not destroy you, that it might actually be what you have been seeking all along. From a neurological standpoint, the healing process requires repetition. The brain is not convinced by isolated experiences, it is convinced by patterns, by data that accumulates over time, by repeated instances of safety, consistency, reciprocity being chosen. One person choosing you once does not overwrite the neural pathways built from years of not being chosen. But one person choosing you consistently, repeatedly over time begins to create new data, new evidence that the old pattern is not universal, that not everyone will leave, that some people do choose and stay, that being chosen is possible. This is why healing is slow. The brain needs time to integrate new information, time to build new neural pathways, time to update the predictions it makes based on past experience. And the nervous system needs even more time, because the nervous system is slower to change than the mind. You can understand something intellectually long before your body believes it. You can know you are safe while your heart still races. You can recognize someone is choosing you while your chest still tightens with the fear they will leave. This is not failure. This is how nervous systems work. They change gradually, through repetition, through consistent new data that contradicts the old predictions. The mind understands safety faster than the body. You can intellectually know you are chosen and still feel tension. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means your system learned different rules early. And updating rules takes time. It takes patience with yourself. It takes compassion for the part of you that still expects rejection, even when all evidence suggests you are chosen. It takes understanding that healing is not linear. that you will have good days and bad days, days when you can trust and days when you cannot, days when you feel chosen and days when you feel completely alone. And all of this is normal. All of this is part of the process. One of the most healing experiences for someone who was never chosen is being pursued, not just being accepted when they initiate, not just being responded to when they reach out, but being pursued, being the person someone else reaches out to first, being the person someone else makes plans with, being the person someone else fights to keep, being the person someone else chooses clearly, consistently, without ambiguity. This experience is transformative because it directly contradicts the core belief, the belief that says no one will choose me unless I choose them first, the belief that says I must always be the pursuer, never the pursued, the belief that says wanting me requires effort on my part, not theirs. Being pursued feels foreign initially. It feels uncomfortable. It triggers suspicion. Why are they doing this? What do they want? When will they stop? Because in their experience, being pursued does not happen, or if it happens briefly, it fades quickly. So they wait for it to fade. They prepare for the moment this person will lose interest. They scan for signs that the pursuit is slowing. And sometimes, in their vigilance, they miss the experience entirely. They are so busy waiting for it to end that they cannot actually receive it while it is happening. But when pursuit is consistent, when someone keeps showing up, keeps reaching out, keeps expressing interest, even when the unchosen person is not reciprocating perfectly, even when they are difficult or distant or testing, something begins to shift. Slowly, carefully, the nervous system begins to integrate this new information. This person is choosing me. Not because I forced them to, not because I convinced them to, not because I earned it through perfect performance. They are choosing me because they want to. And maybe, possibly, that means I am the kind of person who can be chosen, not through effort, just through being. The gradual relaxation that happens when pursuit is consistent is subtle, but profound. The chest loosens slightly, the scanning decreases, the waiting for rejection becomes less constant, not gone, but quieter, less consuming. There are moments where they forget to monitor, where they are simply present without analysing whether they are wanted, where they laugh without wondering if they laughed too loud, where they share something without immediately regretting it, where they exist without performing, and in those moments healing is happening, not dramatically, not obviously, but deeply. Being pursued doesn't erase the history of not being chosen, but it adds new information, and slowly the nervous system begins to learn maybe I don't have to earn this. Maybe being wanted can simply be true. This does not happen all at once. It happens in moments, in small shifts, in the gradual reduction of hypervigilance, in the increasing ability to rest in relationship, in the growing trust that someone might actually stay. And each moment, each shift, each increase in trust is evidence that the pattern can change, that what was learned can be unlearned, that the unchosen can eventually become chosen. Another important part of healing is learning to choose yourself. This phrase has been said so often it risks becoming meaningless. But for the person who was never chosen, it holds specific meaning. Choosing yourself means recognizing your own worth without external validation. It means honoring your needs without apology. It means setting boundaries without guilt. It means walking away from one-sided relationships, even when walking away means being alone. It means treating yourself with the same consistency and care you offer others. It means believing you are valuable even when no one is choosing you, especially when no one is choosing you. This is not easy, because everything in their history tells them that worth comes from being chosen. That value is determined by whether others want them. That mattering requires external confirmation. So choosing themselves feels arrogant, feels selfish, feels like they are demanding something they have not earned. But choosing yourself is not arrogant. It is necessary. It is the foundation upon which all other healing rests. Because if you do not choose yourself, if you do not believe you are worth choosing, then even when someone else chooses you, you will not believe it. You will not trust it. You will wait for them to realize their mistake and leave. Choosing yourself looks different in practice than it sounds in theory. It looks like saying no to plans that do not serve you, even when saying no means disappointing someone. It looks like walking away from friendships where you do all the work, even when those friendships have history. It looks like ending romantic relationships where you are not valued, even when you love the person. It looks like prioritizing your rest, your health, your needs, even when others expect you to be available. It looks like setting boundaries around your time, your energy, your emotional capacity, even when people are used to you having none. This feels selfish at first, because they have spent their entire life putting others first, making themselves available, accommodating everyone else's needs while minimizing their own. And now they are being asked to do the opposite, to honor themselves, to make choices based on what serves them, not just what serves others. And this reversal feels wrong. It feels like they are becoming the kind of person they do not want to be. The kind of person who is difficult, who has needs, who says no, who is not always available. The kind of person, in other words, who might not be chosen. But here is the truth they are learning. People who respect themselves get treated with respect. People who honor their boundaries have their boundaries honored. People who choose themselves attract people who also choose themselves. And those people are capable of choosing others genuinely, mutually, consistently. The people who only want you when you have no boundaries, when you are endlessly available, when you never say no, are not choosing you. They are using you. And that is not the same thing. So choosing yourself is not about becoming unchosen. It is about becoming unchosen by people who would never truly choose you anyway. And becoming available to be chosen by people who actually can. Choosing yourself is not abandoning others. It is finally including yourself in this circle of people who deserve your care. And that realization, when it finally lands, changes everything. It shifts the entire dynamic. You're no longer on the outside looking in. You're no longer waiting to be picked. You're choosing yourself first. And from that place of self-chosen worth, you can build relationships that are mutual, where you choose people who choose you back, where care is reciprocal, where worth does not need to be proven, where belonging is shared, not earned. There is also a specific healing that comes from choosing the unchosen, from using your experience to become someone who sees and includes those who are overlooked, from being the person who picks the one who is always picked last, who invites the person who is never invited, who reaches out to the person everyone forgets, who notices the one sitting alone and makes space for them. This is both beautiful and complicated. Beautiful because it transforms pain into compassion, because it takes the wound and uses it to prevent others from experiencing the same wound, because it means something that hurt you deeply becomes something that helps others. But it is also complicated, because choosing the unchosen can become another way of proving worth, another way of making yourself necessary, another way of earning belonging through service. If you are not careful, you can lose yourself in this pattern. You can become the person who saves everyone, who rescues everyone, who includes everyone. And you can do this not from genuine compassion, but from the need to be needed, from the belief that your value lies in what you offer others, and that belief, even when it manifests as helping, is still the old pattern. Still the belief that you must earn your place, just in a different form. So choosing the unchosen can be healing when it is done with boundaries. When you include others because you genuinely want to, not because you need to prove your worth through including them. When you help because you care, not because you fear being unchosen if you stop helping. When you see others and honour them, but you also see and honour yourself. When your compassion extends outward, but also inward. When you use your experience to help others without sacrificing yourself in the process. This is the balance. This is what transforms the pattern from wound into wisdom. Choosing others who are never chosen can be beautiful, but only if you've learned to choose yourself first. Otherwise, you're still proving worth through giving, just in a different form, and proving worth through giving is exhausting. It is unsustainable. It is the old pattern dressed in new clothes. So the question to ask yourself is, am I choosing this person because I genuinely want to include them? Or am I choosing them because not choosing them would make me the person who left someone out, and I cannot bear to be that person because I know what it feels like? If the answer is the latter, then you are still operating from the wound, and operating from the wound does not heal it, it perpetuates it. Healing also requires grieving what was lost, not just intellectually acknowledging it, but actually grieving it, allowing yourself to feel the sadness of never being someone's first choice, the anger of having to work so hard for what others received easily, the grief of one-sided relationships, the loss of time and energy poured into people who did not pour into you, the pain of being overlooked repeatedly, the exhaustion of always having to choose first. This grief is not self-pity. It is not wallowing. It is not being dramatic. It is honest recognition of what did not happen, of what should have happened but did not. Many people resist this grief. They want to skip to the healing part, to the lessons learned, to the growth that came from the pain, to the gifts that were developed. And all of that is true and real and valuable. But it does not negate the loss. It does not erase the pain. And trying to bypass the grief by focusing only on the growth is a form of spiritual bypassing. It is saying the pain does not matter as long as something good came from it. But the pain does matter. The loss is real, and it deserves to be acknowledged, not rushed through, not minimized, not explained away with silver linings. So grieving means allowing yourself to be sad, to be angry, to feel the weight of what you did not receive, without pressure to find the meaning, without rushing to the lesson, without forcing yourself to be grateful for the pain because it made you stronger. You can be grateful for the strength and still grieve that you had to develop it. You can appreciate the gifts and still mourn that they came at such cost. you can hold both. The value of what was built and the pain of why it had to be built. And holding both is not contradictory. It is honest. Grief is not self-pity, it is honest. And you cannot heal what you haven't allowed yourself to feel. You cannot integrate what you have not acknowledged. You cannot move forward if you are still carrying unprocessed pain. So the grief is necessary, not optional, not a detour on the way to healing, but part of the healing itself, and allowing it, sitting with it, honouring it, is one of the most important things you can do, not forever, not as a place to live permanently, but as a necessary station on the journey, a place to stop and say this hurt. This was not fair. This should not have happened. I deserved better, and I am allowed to grieve that. Another crucial element of healing is learning to trust your own perception, learning to believe what you notice about patterns, about imbalance, about being undervalued, without immediately doubting yourself. Because the unchosen person has learned to doubt themselves constantly, to question whether they are being too sensitive, whether they are overthinking, whether they are expecting too much, whether they are imagining the imbalance, whether they are being unfair, and this self-doubt prevents them from seeing clearly, from recognizing when they are not being chosen, from honouring the truth of their experience. They doubt themselves because others have taught them to doubt. When they expressed hurt, they were told they were too sensitive. When they noticed imbalance, they were told they were keeping score. When they recognized they were not valued, they were told they were being dramatic. And so they learned that their perception is not trustworthy, that what they notice is not real, that their feelings are wrong. And this gaslighting, whether intentional or not, keeps them stuck in relationships that do not serve them, because they cannot trust what they see. They cannot honour what they feel. They cannot act on what they know. Healing means reclaiming trust in your own perception. It means believing yourself when you notice someone is not reciprocating. It means honouring your awareness when you recognise you're always the one reaching out. It means trusting your gut when it tells you someone is not that interested. It means respecting your feelings when you feel hurt, even if the other person tells you that you should not feel hurt. It means knowing that your experience is valid even if no one else validates it. That what you notice is real, even if others dismiss it. That your perception is trustworthy, even if you have been taught to doubt it. Am I being too sensitive? Am I overthinking? Am I asking too much? These questions are not neutral. They are the internalized voice of every person who dismissed your experience, every person who told you to lower your expectations, every person who made you feel like noticing their lack of effort was the problem, not the lack of effort itself. And these questions keep you trapped. They keep you accepting less than you deserve because you cannot trust that you deserve more. They keep you in one-sided relationships because you cannot believe your perception that the relationship is one-sided. Your perception of being unchosen is not paranoia if the pattern proves it true. Trusting what you notice is not cynicism. It is survival turning into wisdom. It is taking the data you have collected over years and allowing it to inform your decisions. It is saying, I see this pattern and I will not explain it away. I notice this imbalance and I will not minimize it. I feel this hurt and I will not dismiss it. This is not being harsh. This is being honest. And honesty is the only foundation upon which you can build relationships that actually serve you. From a psychological standpoint, Healing is not about erasing the past. It is not about pretending it did not happen. It is not about forgetting the pain or denying the impact. Healing is about integration. It is about taking what happened and finding a way to live with it that does not destroy you. It is about carrying the experience without letting the experience define you. It is about remembering the pattern without being controlled by the pattern. It is about acknowledging the wound without living from the wound. You do not forget being unchosen. The memories remain. The experiences remain. The pain remains. But healing means those things no longer dictate every decision you make. They no longer control every relationship you enter. They no longer determine your worth. You can hold the history and still build something new. You can remember the pain and still open to connection. You can carry the wound and still trust that not everyone will wound you in the same way. This is integration. This is what healing actually looks like. Not erasure, not amnesia, but the ability to hold both. The awareness of what was and the possibility of what could be. The goal is not to become someone who never experienced being unchosen. The goal is to become someone who experienced it but is no longer defined by it. To hold the experience as part of your story without letting it be the only story. To use the awareness it created without being imprisoned by it. To let it inform you without controlling you. This is the shift, from being controlled by the past to being informed by it. From being defined by what happened to being shaped by it but not limited by it. From surviving what happened to building a life beyond it. The person who was never chosen doesn't disappear when healing happens. They just get to finally sit down and rest. And know that the choosing can go both ways now. They do not have to prove worth constantly. They do not have to monitor constantly. They do not have to earn love constantly. They can rest in the knowledge that some people will choose them. Not everyone, but some. And those people, the ones who choose genuinely, mutually, consistently, are the ones worth keeping. The others, the ones who require constant effort with minimal reciprocity, those relationships can be released without guilt. Because holding on to relationships that do not serve you is not loyalty, it is self-abandonment. And healing means choosing yourself enough to let go of what does not choose you. Healing looks different for everyone, but there are common elements. You notice when you are overextending yourself and you choose to stop. You recognize when someone is not reciprocating, and you allow that information to matter. You can sit with someone's disinterest without chasing it. You can receive care without immediately reciprocating to pay off some perceived debt. You stay present when someone shows genuine interest, instead of waiting for them to leave. You choose yourself without guilt. You grieve without shame. You hope without desperation. You trust your perception without doubting it constantly. You set boundaries without apologizing. You walk away from imbalance without questioning whether you're being too harsh. These are the signs, not that you're healed completely, but that healing is happening. Healing doesn't mean you never get triggered. It means the trigger doesn't control you anymore. You notice it, you understand it, and you choose differently anyway. You feel the old fear rising when someone does not text back immediately, but instead of spiraling, you pause. You remind yourself that this does not mean they are leaving, that one unanswered text does not confirm the pattern, that you can wait without panic. You feel the impulse to chase someone who is pulling away, but instead of pursuing, you stop. You recognize that chasing unavailability is the old pattern, and you choose not to repeat it, even though every part of you wants to. Even though it feels wrong to stop, you choose differently because you know now that chasing does not create choosing. Protection in adulthood looks different than what was missing in childhood. In childhood, protection would have meant being chosen naturally, being picked first, being valued without having to prove it, being included automatically. But that did not happen, and you cannot go back and change it. So protection now means something else. It means choosing carefully. It means honoring reciprocity. It means walking away from imbalance. It means setting boundaries. It means prioritizing relationships where you are valued. It means creating an environment where you do not have to prove worth constantly. It means surrounding yourself with people who choose you consistently. Protection now means saying no to people who only reach out when they need something. It means releasing friendships where you do all the work. It means ending romantic relationships where you are an option, not a priority. It means not accepting breadcrumbs and calling it love. It means recognizing that being alone is better than being with people who make you feel alone. It means understanding that quality matters more than quantity. That one person who genuinely chooses you is worth more than 10 people who keep you around out of convenience. It means building a life where being unchosen is not your constant experience, where most of the people in your life are there because they want to be, not because you convinced them to stay. Protection is no longer about making yourself small and easy to love. It is about honoring your worth and letting that filter who gets close. It is about recognizing that not everyone deserves access to you, that your time, your energy, your care are valuable, that you get to choose who receives those things, and you get to withdraw those things from people who do not reciprocate, without guilt, without apology, without explanation. Because protecting yourself is not cruelty, it is self-respect. And self-respect is what allows you to build relationships that are actually healthy, where both people choose, where both people care, where both people show up. The person who was never chosen but kept choosing anyway learned something most people never do. They learned persistence, not just as stubbornness, but as a form of courage. The courage to keep trying even when trying is painful. The courage to keep showing up even when no one shows up for them. The courage to keep caring even when that care is not returned. The courage to keep hoping even when hope leads to disappointment. This is not a small thing. This is extraordinary. This is a capacity most people do not have. Because most people, when faced with repeated rejection, stop. They withdraw. They protect themselves by closing off. But the unchosen person did not close off. They stayed open. They kept trying. They kept choosing. They also learned loyalty in ways that cannot be taught. They learned to show up for people, to remember people, to include people, to value people, not because those people earned it, but because they understand what it feels like to not be valued, and they do not want anyone else to feel that invisibility. They learn to see people who are easy to overlook, to notice the quiet ones, the forgotten ones, the ones on the margins, because they recognize themselves in those people, and they cannot walk past them without doing something. This loyalty was not learned from books or taught by example. It was lived. It was developed through experiencing its absence, and it is real, and it matters. But what they developed through pain should not be confused with the pain itself being good. The pain was not good, the rejection was not good, being overlooked was not good. These things were damaging, they created wounds, they built patterns that caused suffering, and acknowledging the gifts that came from survival does not mean the survival should have been necessary. It does not mean the pain was worth it. It does not mean everything happens for a reason. It means that human beings are resilient, that they find ways to survive, that they develop capacities in response to necessity, and those capacities are real. But so is the cost. What they developed is real. What they lost is also real. And healing means honoring both without having to choose which matters more. You can appreciate the empathy you developed and still grieve that you developed it through being dismissed. You can value the loyalty you learned and still be angry that you learned it through being forgotten. You can acknowledge your strength and still wish you had not needed to be so strong. All of this can be true at once, and holding all of it is what integration means, not picking one narrative, not choosing between grateful and grieved, but allowing both to exist, because both are honest. The person who was never chosen grew into an adult who knows how to survive rejection. They mastered survival. They learned to persist. They learned to adapt. They learned to keep trying even when trying brought pain. They learned to show up even when no one showed up for them. They learned to care even when that care was not returned. And these are not small skills. These are profound capacities. But survival was never supposed to be the goal. Survival is what you do when you have no choice, when the alternative is worse, when stopping would mean something unbearable. But there is supposed to be more than survival. There is supposed to be living, and living is different. Living means relationships where you do not have to earn belonging. It means rest without guilt. It means being chosen without performing. It means trust without constant verification. It means connection that is mutual. It means care that is reciprocal. It means worth that is inherent. It means you do not have to prove anything. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to be useful. You can simply be, and being is enough. The next chapter is about learning what living looks like, learning to experience relationships without constantly managing them, learning to rest without waiting for consequences, learning to receive without immediately reciprocating, learning to trust without scanning for betrayal, learning to choose yourself as automatically as you once chose others, learning to believe being chosen is possible without proof, learning to stay present when someone pursues you, learning to allow care without deflecting it, learning to set boundaries without guilt, learning to honor reciprocity without shame, learning to grieve without bypassing, learning to trust your perception without doubting it, learning to walk away from what does not serve you, learning to build toward what does. This is not forgetting what happened. It is not erasing the pattern. It is not pretending the pain did not exist. It is building something new alongside the old. It is taking the awareness that came from being unchosen and using it without being imprisoned by it. It is allowing the past to inform you without controlling you. It is holding the history without being defined by it. It is carrying the wound without living from it. It is integrating what was while creating what could be. This means that persistence and rest can coexist, that you can keep showing up for people without abandoning yourself, that you can care deeply without depleting yourself, that choosing others and choosing yourself are not mutually exclusive, that you can be loyal without being self-sacrificing, that you can be generous without being exhausted, that you can be open without being naive, that you can be hopeful without being desperate, that you can trust without being blind. That awareness does not require vigilance. That strength does not require hardness. That vulnerability does not equal weakness. It means relationships where both people choose, where both people try, where both people show up, where care is reciprocal, where effort is mutual, where you are valued not for what you offer, but for who you are, where rest does not threaten connection, where needs are allowed, where boundaries are respected, where mistakes are not catastrophic, where being human is acceptable, where you do not have to be perfect to be wanted, where choosing and being chosen feel like the same thing, because they finally are, and slowly, over time, the nervous system learns something it never did before. That choosing and being chosen don't have to be mutually exclusive, that persistence can rest, that hoping doesn't always end in rejection, that being overlooked once doesn't mean invisible forever, that you can be seen, that you can be valued, that you can be chosen, not by everyone, but by some. And some is enough. Some is more than you thought possible. Some is everything. This is not denial of what happened. This is permission for what comes next. This is not erasing the past. This is opening a future where the past no longer writes every chapter, where old patterns inform but do not dictate, where old wounds exist but do not bleed constantly, where old fears arise but do not control, where you can remember being unchosen without believing you are unchosen, where you can carry the history without being trapped in it, where you can honour what was while building what could be. And that shift, when it finally lands, changes everything. It doesn't erase the past, but it opens a future where being chosen and choosing yourself can finally feel like the same thing, where worth does not need to be proven constantly, where belonging does not need to be earned endlessly, where relationships can be mutual, where care can be reciprocal, where you can rest, where you can trust, where you can hope, where you can choose without desperation, where you can be chosen without suspicion, where you can simply be. And being finally is enough, and that is not weakness, that is healing.